20,000 years ago, the world outside your door would have tried to kill you within hours. Temperatures plunging far below anything you've ever felt. Wind that could freeze exposed skin in minutes. No heated buildings. No stockpiled food from a grocery store. And yet, your ancestors didn't just survive that world. They raised children in it, told stories around fires in it, and eventually walked out the other side of it, all the way into the world you live in now. How does a hairless, relatively slow, physically unremarkable primate survive an ice age? The real answer is far stranger than brute toughness. It's a story about clothing, cooperation, and a level of environmental engineering most people never associate with the deep past. Start with the obvious problem. Your body, biologically, is built for warmth, not cold. You don't have thick fur. You don't hibernate. Your bare skin loses heat rapidly in freezing air. In evolutionary terms, you're a tropical animal, descended from ancestors who thrived in the warm grasslands and forests of Africa. So when ice sheets crept across huge portions of the northern hemisphere, and average temperatures dropped dramatically for thousands of years at a stretch, your ancestors were, on paper, exactly the wrong kind of creature to be living through it. And yet, they did. Why? The first answer involves something you probably take completely for granted. Clothing. Not just any covering, but tailored, fitted clothing, sewn together from animal hides and furs using actual needles. An archaeologist named Ian Gilligan has studied the deep history of clothing and argued that the shift from simple draped skins to sewn, fitted garments was a critical technological leap, one that allowed humans to trap body heat far more efficiently than loose wrapping ever could. Gilligan's research points to the appearance of specialized bone needles in the archaeological record, tools fine enough to sew tight seams, showing up specifically during the coldest stretches of the Ice Age. Isn't it interesting that a tiny, easily overlooked tool, a needle barely the size of your finger, might have been just as important to human survival as fire itself? Speaking of fire, don't underestimate it. Controlled fire gave your ancestors something no other cold-adapted animal on the planet had. A portable, on-demand heat source they could carry with them, protect, and rebuild wherever they went. Fire didn't just provide warmth. It let them cook meat, which made it easier to digest and extract more calories from, exactly the kind of caloric density a body needs to survive brutal, sustained cold. Fire also extended the usable day, pushing back darkness, predators, and the isolating psychological weight of endless winter nights. A group huddled around a fire wasn't just warm. They were connected, alert, and functioning as a unit, even in conditions that would have killed a lone individual within a single night. Now think about shelter, because clothing and fire alone weren't enough. In the coldest, most treeless regions, your ancestors faced an unusual problem. No forests meant no wood for building or burning. So what did they use instead? Bone. An archaeologist named Olga Sofer extensively studied a set of remarkable sites across parts of Eastern Europe and Ukraine, where ancient humans built dwellings using the skeletal remains of woolly mammoths, arranging massive leg bones, skulls, and tusks into structural frameworks, then covering them with hides for insulation. These weren't small huts. Some mammoth bone structures were substantial enough to house extended family groups through entire winters. Think about the sheer scale of that solution. Your ancestors looked at a landscape with no trees and no natural shelter, and built houses out of the largest land animals available to them. That's not just survival. That's engineering, adapted in real time to an environment that offered almost nothing to work with. Here's a question worth sitting with. Where did the food come from in a landscape frozen for most of the year? The answer largely comes down to megafauna, the enormous cold-adapted animals that roamed Ice Age landscapes. Mammoths, woolly rhinoceroses, giant bison, reindeer, moving in massive herds across the tundra. These animals carried enormous amounts of fat and protein, exactly the caloric density a human body needs to survive extreme cold, when metabolism has to work overtime just to maintain core temperature. Hunting an animal that size wasn't a solo endeavor. It required coordinated groups, shared risk, and a level of social trust and planning that pushed early human cooperation to new levels. A failed hunt could mean disaster for an entire group. A successful one could feed dozens of people for weeks. This is where something deeper than tools and shelter comes into play. Cooperation itself became a survival technology. A researcher named John Hoffaker, who has studied Arctic and Ice Age human adaptation extensively, has argued that surviving extreme cold environments required not just physical tools, but complex social organization, extended kinship networks, and the ability to share information and resources across groups spread over large territories. In brutal environments, a lone human, however skilled, faced enormous odds. A tightly connected group, sharing food, warmth, tool-making knowledge, and childcare, could weather conditions that would kill an isolated individual within days. Isn't it strange to think that something as intangible as trust and cooperation might have been just as critical to Ice Age survival as any physical tool? Migration mattered too, and it wasn't random wandering. Your ancestors followed the herds, moving seasonally to track the animals that sustained them. And when conditions became truly unbearable in the deepest parts of the Ice Age, populations retreated toward what researchers call refugia. Pockets of relatively milder climate, often in southern parts of Europe, where enough resources remained to sustain human life through the harshest glacial peaks. When conditions eased, even slightly, populations expanded outward again from these refuges. This pattern of retreat and expansion, repeated across thousands of years, shaped the genetic and cultural landscape of entire continents. You are, quite literally, descended from people who knew exactly when to stay and when to move. Think about what all of this required simultaneously. Technical skill, sewing hides into fitted insulating clothing, engineering ingenuity, building shelter from whatever materials the landscape actually offered, even when that meant mammoth bones instead of timber. Strategic hunting, coordinating dangerous group efforts against animals many times a human's size and weight, and underlying every single one of those things, deep social cooperation, the willingness to share, plan, and depend on people beyond your immediate family. No single innovation saved your ancestors. It was the combination, layered together, each piece compensating for what the environment refused to provide. There's something worth reflecting on here about what actually makes humans resilient. It's tempting to imagine survival as a story of individual toughness, the hardiest, strongest people simply outlasting the weakest. But the archaeological record tells a different story. Survival came from adaptability, from tool innovation, from social structures flexible enough to share resources across a harsh, unpredictable landscape. Your ancestors didn't outmuscle the Ice Age. They outthought it, outcooperated it, and slowly, patiently, engineered their way through conditions that should have been unsurvivable for a species built for the tropics. So the next time you put on a warm coat without thinking twice about it, or step into a heated room and feel instant relief from the cold outside, remember what that ordinary comfort actually represents. Somewhere in your deep ancestry, a group of humans sat inside a shelter built from mammoth bones, wearing tightly sewn fur clothing, sharing food from a hunt that could have killed them, and outlasted an ice age that lasted tens of thousands of years. You're not just descended from survivors. You're descended from problem solvers. And every warm room you've ever taken for granted is proof that their solution worked.